I am overwhelmed. That's the only way I can really describe how we feel. Everything seems unreal right now. My wife and I have been together for 35 years. We got married young, and about 10 years later, we were expecting our first child. I still remember the day she was taken to the hospital. I was at work when her water broke, but instead of calling me and insisting I come immediately, she told me everything was fine and that I should stay where I was. I told her she had to be crazy if she thought I was going to miss the birth of my child. In response, she practically yelled at me to remain at work. I assumed it was just the stress and hormones talking. I finished my shift and rushed to the hospital the moment I clocked out. The trip turned out to be pointless. When I arrived, my wife was nowhere to be found. Surrounded by the chaos of a busy hospital, I grew more anxious by the minute until my pager suddenly went off. It was my wife's number. Confused and worried, I hurried to the nearest phone and answered the call. She was already home, asking where I had been. After a brief argument over how absurd this question sounded, I got back in my car and drove home as fast as I could. When I arrived, I found her curled up in a chair in the living room. She was holding our newborn and looked completely exhausted. Under normal circumstances, it should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. Instead, I felt nothing but confusion. The reason was simple. Throughout the entire pregnancy, the doctors had told us we were having a boy, yet there she was holding a baby girl. My wife explained that there had been some kind of mix-up with the paperwork. It was an expensive mistake considering how much money we had already spent on clothes and toys for a son. Even so, I let myself be happy. I was a father now. I had waited 9 months for that moment, and I wasn't about to let a paperwork error ruin it. Besides, my wife looked far too exhausted to discuss it. That first night at home, I stayed in bed with my wife and our baby daughter. I helped them fall asleep in each other's arm. I rubbed my wife's back. I held the baby whenever she cried. It felt like the beginning of an entirely new chapter in our lives. From that day forward, I worked as hard as I could to provide for them. I kept food on the table, paid the bills, and made sure the lights stayed on. Whenever I could, I put money aside for bigger gifts, whether it was jewelry or a new swing set. Watching my daughter grow up was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I watched her take her first steps, saw her walk into school on her first day, and witnessed her grow into a bright young woman. Before I knew it, I was sitting in the audience, watching her cross the stage at her high school graduation. There was always something a little strange about it, though. Nobody ever said she looked like me. In fact, nobody ever said she looked much like her mother either. If I'm being honest, I noticed it too, but it never affected the way I felt about her. Unfortunately, every happy story eventually reaches its end, and ours ended when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Those years were some of the hardest I've ever endured. Watching the woman I loved lose her appetite, watching her hair disappear, watching her slowly lose her life. It broke something inside me that never truly healed. My daughter and I stayed by her side through it all. We were there every day, but on the day she passed away, things were different. My daughter was attending classes at a state university nearly 100 miles away, and I was left alone to watch my entire world fall apart. In her final moments, she looked at me with the same love I remembered from the day we first met. But this time, it felt different, more reflective, more sorrowful, as if she understood that everything was about to end. Then her expression changed, her smile disappeared. Lines formed across her forehead. She began to cry. What she told me next is what completely shattered my reality. Ever since that moment, I've questioned our marriage, our lives, and everything I thought I knew. I'd like to say her words left me confused, but the truth is, they made far too much sense. According to my wife, our son died during childbirth due to complications. When the doctors told her that our baby hadn't survived, something in her mind broke. Rather than accepting the loss, she refused to believe it. The daughter I raised was taken from someone else. And after all these years, I still haven't been able to tell her. My mother has dementia, and lately she keeps insisting that her children aren't really her children. At first, I thought it was just the illness talking. Now, I'm not sure. She was diagnosed in the spring, early onset dementia, the neurologist called it, which is really just a clinical way of saying this shouldn't be happening yet, and nobody fully understands why it is. My mom is only 61. She still finishes crossword puzzles in pen. She can still recite every word of songs that came out before I was born. Yet somehow, she'll ask me 4 times in the same afternoon whether I remembered to lock the car. So when she started talking about my brother, we assumed it was another symptom. At first, it was supple. Then he came over for Sunday dinner, something he'd done nearly every week for as long as I can remember. During the meal, Mom barely touched her food. She just sat there, watching him as he ate. After he left, she grabbed my arm in the kitchen so hard it left marks and said, "That's not Danny." I told her it obviously was. She'd known him for 34 years. She made a sound I'd never heard before, then repeated herself, slower this time, as if I was the one who didn't understand. "That is not my son." The doctors had an explanation ready, Capgras syndrome. He said it with the strange enthusiasm doctors sometimes have when they finally get to put a name to something. According to him, it's a delusion where a person becomes convinced that someone close to them has been replaced by an identical imposter. They recognize the face, but the emotional connection isn't there. The part of the brain that says, this person is familiar, this person is loved, stops working properly. The mind notices the disconnect and fills in the blank with the only explanation it can accept: a stranger, a copy, an imposter. It's not uncommon, he told us. It can be very difficult for families, but try not to take it personally. The problem was, I did take it personally, not because she was rejecting Danny, because of who she wasn't rejecting. She never said it about me. As the disease progressed, things got worse, much worse. And through all of it, she held on to me. When the home health aide arrived, Mom screamed that the woman was wearing someone else's face. When my aunt came to visit, she refused to be in the same room with her. When Danny brought his children over, my mother, who used to keep a drawer full of Weathers candies just for those grandkids, looked at them with cold suspicion and quietly asked me where the real ones were. But she always knew me. She always trusted me. She pulled me close and whispered to me when nobody else could reach her. And if I'm being honest, I liked it. That's the ugly truth. My mother was drowning in her own mind, surrounded by people she believed were strangers. And I felt special because I was the one person she still recognized. I convinced myself it means something. I told myself it proved our bond was stronger than everyone else's, that Whatever connected us was steady enough to survive, even as everything else inside her fell apart. Before I tell you what happened next, I need that part to be clear. I need you to understand that despite everything, I was glad. The caregivers started leaving. 3 of them quit within 2 months. Eventually, the agency stopped sending replacements altogether. The last 8, an older woman who had spent 2 decades working with dementia patients and wasn't easily rattled, stopped me before she left. She told me she'd seen plenty of cases like my mother's over the years, but insisted this wasn't one of them. When I asked what she meant, she wouldn't elaborate. Instead, she simply said, "She's not confused about everyone. Pay attention to who she gets confused about. There is a pattern." Then she got into her car and drove away. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was exhausted in a way that's difficult to explain, the kind of exhaustion where you stop keeping track of whether you've eaten, where one day bleeds into the next until they all feel the same. Most nights, I slept at my mother's house, back in my childhood bedroom beneath the same ceiling I stared at 4 years growing up. Danny covered some shifts, my aunt covered others. We kept a schedule on the refrigerator with everyone's names written in different colors, looking more like a kindergarten project than a caregiving plan. Oddly enough, it was that calendar that started everything after all that had happened. It came down to a calendar. One morning, around 4 o'clock, I was standing in front of the fridge drinking milk. I glanced at the calendar and suddenly had a strange thought. It arrived fully formed, cold and immediate, as thought it had been waiting for the right moment. I couldn't remember Danny's wedding, not pieces of it. The entire thing. I knew he was married. I knew Sarah. I knew their children. I knew they lived on Linden Street. I knew all of these things, the same way you know any fact. But I couldn't remember the wedding itself. I couldn't picture the church, couldn't remember what I wore, couldn't remember the speech I must have given, because I was his only sister, and there was no chance I wouldn't have given one. There was simply nothing, just a smooth blank space where the memory should have been, like a scar that's healed so perfectly you forget there was ever a wound there at all. I told myself I was tired. People forget things, forget weddings, but the thought stayed with me, so I started digging, and the more I looked, the worse it became. The missing pieces weren't random, they were important and foundational. I could remember the exact brand of cigarettes my father smoked, even though he'd been dead for 20 years. But I couldn't picture Danny's face at our mother's 50th birthday. I could remember the smell of the lake house in summer, but I couldn't remember who was sitting in the boat with me. Every memory involving Danny felt strange, not false exactly, just distant, like looking at a photograph someone else had carefully described to me. The details were there, but the emotions were not. The memories felt occupied by a person who wasn't me. Eventually, I walked into my mother's room and sat on the edge of her bed. She was awake. Lately, she often was. One of the first things the disease had stolen from her was any sense of time. I asked her, even as the words left my mouth. I felt ridiculous for asking them, but I asked anyway. I wanted to know when she had first realized Danny wasn't really Danny. What I'll never forget is that she didn't react, as though it was a crazy question. For months, everyone who loved her had treated her like she was losing her mind. But the moment I asked her directly, she answered me. Her voice was calm, clear. "After the hospital," she said, "when he came home from the hospital." She stared ahead as she spoke. "He came back looking like Danny, but he wasn't Danny anymore. None of them were. They left, and I then came back. They were wrong. But everyone acted like nothing had happened, like I was the crazy one." Her eyes drifted toward the dark window. "Your aunt was next, then the children, one by one. And every time it happened, the ones who had already changed would smile at me and tell me I was confused." My mouth had gone completely dry. I asked why she was telling me this, why she trusted me, when she trusted no one else. My mother looked at me then, and there was so much love in her eyes, so much grief, the kind of love that feels bottomless. Slowly, she reached up and brushed my hair behind my ear, the same way she used to when I was sick as a child. Her hand trembled. She smiled. It was the smile of someone whose heart had been broken long ago and never truly healed. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "I'm not telling you." I froze. "I gave up on you years ago." Her smile never changed. "You were the first one they took." She paused. "You just don't know it." Then she continued gently stroking my hair. "I still like talking to you, though," she said softly, "because you sound exactly like her." I've been sitting in the kitchen ever since sunrise. Danny is supposed to arrive at noon. He wants to discuss moving Mom somewhere more secure, somewhere with locks on the outside of the doors. He keeps insisting it's for her safety, over and over again. Her safety, her safety. For the first time, I'm hearing something strange in the way he says it. And for the last 6 hours, I've been trying to remember something, anything. One memory from my childhood that belongs entirely to me. Not a story someone told me, not a family anecdote, not a memory that feels borrowed. Something real, something I experienced from the inside. I can't find a single one, so now I'm asking you, whoever you are, because there is no one left in my family I trust enough to ask. I need someone outside of all this to tell me my mother is sick. Tell me this is the dementia talking. Tell me everyone remembers things this way. Tell me it's normal for memories to feel distant, second-hand, polished smooth by time. Tell me none of this means anything. Please, before noon, tell me she's confused.